Key criticisms. There seem to be three streams of criticism around teaching presence. Research revealing that students in online courses may not even expect significant teaching presence. A misunderstanding of teaching presence in relation to earlier models in distance education. Stronger definitions of the theoretical underpinning of the community of inquiry model, and by extension, teaching presence and the other presences. According to Mapinga, Nora and Yor in 2006, there's not a strong indication that students need a personal connection with the instructor. Rather, the literature demonstrates that students enter the online world because it is suitable for independent learners because it offers a delivery format that is convenient, flexible, anonymous, and immediately accessible. Anderson also backs up this position. Contrary to popular belief, the major motivation for enrolment in distance education is not physical access, but rather temporal freedom to move through a course of studies at a pace of the student's choice. Participation in a community of learners almost inevitably places constraints on this independence, even when the pressures of a synchronous connection is eliminated by use of asynchronous communication tools. The demands of a learning-centered context might at times force us to modify the prescriptive participation in communities of learning, even though we might have evidence that such participation will further advance knowledge and creation and attention. So, even though there might be an advantage to creating a community of inquiry and distributing teaching presence throughout so that knowledge is constructed through social interaction, based on the student's desire for an independent transaction, it is more important to provide temporal freedom than to prescribe participation in a community of learners. So we're really there talking about learner control. Studies have also shown that in Western education contexts, adult learners taking online courses may not be even expecting significant teacher presence. I wonder though, are students considering teaching presence as the teacher posting on forums, doing Blackboard Collaborate sessions, etc., and not considering teaching presence within the design and facilitation aspects? Partly corroborating this is research that shows teaching presence is low on the list of reasons learners do not continue online courses, and that values related to course design, course support, and evaluation are typically higher than those of teaching presence. Although some research shows that people who take online courses have an expectation there will be limited teaching presence, other studies in distance education show that students equate learning with high teaching presence and cognitive presence. Based on this thinking, perhaps more focus and energy should be spent on the overall course design, especially as Anderson's interaction patterns, as Geneviève mentioned. Design likely has more effect than facilitation and direct instruction alone during a course. For example, the presence in a forum, responding to questions, audio visuals of the tutor speaking. The design component of teaching presence already encompasses facilitation and direct instruction. Careful design can also overcome the simple fact that many students, and teachers maybe, can't tell the difference between facilitation and direct instruction. Early thinking on teaching presence in distance education was called social presence, and thought of as inferior to classroom communication, in part because of the lack of paralinguistic features in text-heavy contexts. Research, however, showed that students compensate for this in a variety of ways in their off-course text chats, postings and forums, thus showing evidence of self-direction. Indeed, much teaching presence goes on outside the formal online discussions, and further research needs to figure out how to capture this and relate it to existing research in teaching presence. This criticism was also a result of viewing the new online medium through the lens of the old classroom medium. The community of inquiry was the first to separate this. However, students and teachers still conflate the two. This may have confused many teachers when considering the concept of teacher presence versus teaching presence. The former being content expert-led instruction, the latter being anyone who takes up the role of the teacher in a specific instance. In fact, much research on teaching presence has looked at its more traditional manifestations, discussion forums, etc., thus leading to limited data on how else teaching presence is present in courses. Research into the community of inquiry model has been criticised as not relating to the community of inquiry's central claim that it supports deep and meaningful learning, and that more research needs to focus on validating this claim. Furthermore, some criticism has been made about the theoretical underpinnings of the community of inquiry model, and that more work needs to be done on describing it in relation to constructivism and socio-constructivism. Constructivism suggests an element of self-direction in learning, taking responsibility for learning and collaboration in the community. How is this element of self-direction supported in a course when we incorporate teaching presence in its development? Within the design, facilitation, or direction component? How is our self-direction expected to manifest itself? Indeed, given the studies that show limited student expectation of teaching presence in online courses, how can the teacher's facilitation strategies help with self-direction if the students don't place value on that interaction in the first place? I thought, does the community of inquiry, and by extension teaching presence, fulfill the longing for a theoretical foundation for online learning? Considering our main theme of teaching beyond the grave, can constructivist approaches to course design facilitate self-direction to such an extent that they render the direct instruction and facilitation aspects of teaching presence irrelevant? This chart just gives an overview of some of the main themes around the criticisms of teaching presence, whether they be in the research area, the theoretical background, student views, and design aspects.